I'd like to ask you, Sharon, a couple of questions about your work. And I find that these paintings have an amazing feel to them. Like they are realism verging on pure abstraction. And can you tell us a little about that?
Well, I think I've been leaning towards abstraction the more I paint, and even when I'm doing representational painting, there tends to be elements of abstraction in them, just as you've pointed out. This particular one has been done as a result of a trip to the Bugaboos, and that was a very, very exciting trip. I mean, who often has a chance to go up to the mountains?
What the Bugaboos are and where they are.
The Bugaboos are part of a ridge of mountains very close to the Rockies and sort of just south of Banff. And in the Bugaboos, they have extremely high peaks that they take people to. They take you as high as 8,000 feet. And you can only sort of accomplish that by going in a helicopter. So there is a certain fear factor associated with painting in the Bugaboos. And that is getting in and out of the helicopter with the blades whirling, etc. And everybody in position on the ground, crouched and covered, your head covered, and all of your equipment on the other side of the helicopter. And so there are all those elements, but it's very, very exciting. And of course, there are lots of neat things to see.
So were you there by yourself or with a group of artists?
I was there with a group of artists. I was there with Robert Genn, and with the rest there were 10 of us, as well as Robert Genn, and also Liz Wilson. So Robert Genn is an extremely well-known Canadian artist.
We know his work.
Right.
And so the work that was produced there, the work that you made in that location, were there several paintings? Were you there for a number of days?
We were there, I think, a total of 4 days, and there were plein air paintings that were done on site, whether it was snowing or windy or sunny or whatever the conditions were. But there were we also had an opportunity to do some paintings later when we got back. Each of us got back to our studios based on the sketches that we had done there.
Can you tell me about the stylistic difference in these paintings? Like, you really have made a leap in your work, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, often what happens with me is that I start out with an intention of perhaps doing a representational painting. So a tree is a tree. And as I go along, little things happen that I like. And so I let it happen to me, and what comes out of it often is a different type of work. And oftentimes one that has more abstract elements to it. And so you can see that in these particular pieces here.
Well, it seems that you're dealing with pure forms, rather than just the fact a tree is a tree. We have like triangular forms that are repeated and cubic forms that are represented.
Absolutely, and I do love geometric forms, and you'll see them throughout my paintings. And no matter which series of paintings we're talking about, whether we're talking about the forest series, you'll see them there as well. Because shapes really appeal to me, and colors really appeal to me.
Well, I think that your work has a lot of strength and also diversity. You have several different styles. If we can take a moment, I'd like to just have a look at this pair of paintings that have taken that idea of abstraction even further.
Yes, these are part of a series of paintings that I did called the Forest Series, and there are, well, I've painted more than 50, but 50 of them appear on my website. website. And in these ones, in the whole series, I weave in and out of abstraction. It all started with a purely representational painting of looking up at a tree and seeing the light transform through the branches of the tree. And I started off purely accidentally by just saying, oh, I'll just paint the background any old way because I know I can change it. And I started painting the background and it didn't matter what I was doing to it. Then, all of a sudden, something happened and I really liked what I saw. So I began to really do some negative painting, a lot of negative painting in the backspace. And that's how the whole series started. So this particular series is all focused on negative spaces, painting negative spaces. So, for example, here, and here, and here, and here, those would be the positive strokes that I would make on the painting. And how the design actually emerges is through painting all of the negative spaces in between those.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I was just talking to somebody about the negative space in one of your other paintings.
Yes.
And how that really gives you a second look at the painting. And once you start really focusing on that negative space, then your eye kind of flips between foreground and background. But I think that there's more than that because you've really condensed your palette as well. You know, that you're not dealing just with that sense of positive negative space, but your palette has been reduced to not primaries, but very distinct tones.
It has, and when I was doing this series of paintings, you can see that I was in each painting, or perhaps I tended to think, what might make interesting colors together? And I did go ahead and lay out my palette before I started this painting. As I went on with it, sometimes I experimented a little bit more what might look good with it and what might not look good with it. But I did have some idea in mind of the palette before I did these two pieces. So you can see that through some of the other pieces that I've done, I have distinctly gone for different colors in some of them.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. And there's really a lot of freedom expressed in your paintings, and I really feel like these recent works are much looser and much more fluid than some of your earlier samples of work. So thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing this.
Thank you very much, John.